Hello, stefhenhaires. This is Lengthy Onward here, and I'd like to make a video response to your video. What was it called? Addressing socialism could never work. I apologize for this being so late. It's been almost a year, 11 months since you posted that video, and I don't believe I ever saw it, um, even though I was tagged in it. Apparently, I had made some comments on one of your earlier videos, not that lengthy, but I had brought up, without going into much detail, a number of criticisms of socialism, and in this video, you said it was a civil dialogue, and I'm gonna just take your word for it because I don't remember, and that I brought up some interesting things, and that there was a lot of material you could cover. Now, I didn't see this video, and I wouldn't have seen it either, except just the other day I got a smartphone for the first time, and while attempting to navigate it, I decided to attempt to log into my YouTube account, which I failed to do, and I just did a search for my username. And obviously, what came up first was videos that I had done, and then yours, because you tagged me, and or put me in the description or something. And I thought, who is this? I don't remember. So, yeah, it's been a year, and I saw it, and I thought, oh, this would be a good chance to engage in dialogue. You seem to be fairly interested in doing that. So I thought, why not? Now, you go through my thing, and you read some of my comments, and you mention that I bring up the knowledge problem as is described by F.A. Hayek, and then the socialist economic calculation problem, by the way, that I think is misnamed because it applies to more things than just socialism, by Ludwig von Mises. And although you talk about wanting to address this, you don't actually do so in the video. Instead, attacking some other comments that were made. And fortunately, you haven't made so many videos since then that it's hard to look through them all. I hadn't watched them all, but just based on the titles and the few that I did watch, it doesn't appear, and please direct me to the video that I'm missing if I'm wrong, that you ever did address the socialist economic calculation problem as put forward by Ludwig von Mises, or the knowledge problem, or any others. In fact, from what I can tell, you basically have done the equivalent of picking the lowest hanging fruit. That is to say, you've attacked the weakest anti-socialist arguments. You haven't strawmanned anything as far as I can tell, at least as far as you're attempting to refute anti-socialist arguments. But there are some very, very strong criticisms of socialism, some very big problems with it, and you're, as far as I can tell, haven't addressed it. Now, perhaps you have, and I just haven't been able to see it. That's certainly possible. I think it's interesting, though, that you said, oh, there's a lot of topic here, and then, I mean, your subsequent videos don't show this. At no point in the video is it clear to me that you are familiar with the socialist economic calculation problem, let alone that you've refuted it in any way. Nobody has, to my knowledge, and actually a number of socialists have basically admitted that there is no solution to it, that it is actually an insolvable problem. Like I said, I don't think it's I don't want to try and outline it all here, because quite frankly it gets kind of long, because you have to start getting into price theory and capital theory, and basically you have to have some understanding of economy, and based on some of the other videos I watched, we're not going to be on the same page there. It's pretty clear, watching your video on ways to solve the debt crisis, that I have to cover a lot of ground. But I will say, if you haven't looked into it, I highly encourage you. The Wikipedia article on it does exist, and although I haven't read it in some time, it's probably fairly accurate. I will also say that It is not an argument that is dependent upon the Soviet Union. In fact, although the book he wrote about it came out in 1920, which is during the Russian Civil War, the concept occurred to him before World War I even. So it predates the USSR, and was actually something that they considered a very powerful critique. There's a number of stories I've heard of Eastern Europeans who are actually very familiar with this critique, because when they were in school during the Iron Curtain, it was put in textbooks as one of the great arguments against it. And although refutations were offered, they were extremely weak, and many people believe that they were that they failed to refute this argument. So I would definitely encourage you to look into it and let me know what you think, what your take is on it. To my knowledge, it's not been refuted, and it is the most solid. It doesn't, for instance, many arguments tend to, hinge on human nature or whatever. This one doesn't. Now, moving on from that, you make a couple of other assertions in this video, and I think one of your subsequent ones, that I think are unjustified. One is you claim that many free market advocates view a market economy, a free market economy, is somehow natural, and that by extension we've had thousands and thousands of years of market economy. Now, I will actually agree that many, if not most, and possibly even all, although I haven't taken a survey, free market economists would actually agree that a market economy is natural, that a state without coercion is the normal way a human society would function, and that we have. But they would also say that any kind of state, and especially any overt state intervention in the economy, is an aberration of that. And at least through recorded history, that is what we have had for thousands of years, not a free market economy. States have been intervening in the economy since there have been states, and so we're talking Sumer and Akkad here. We're going all the way back to Ur and Uruk, the pharaonic states of Egypt, Rome, Greece, all of them had rather extensive, for the capabilities of the states, interventions in the economy. They typically had, once they got going, absolute states that theoretically were permitted to do anything. There was no concept of limited powers, so to speak. Now, there were practical limits to what could actually be done. Obviously, they couldn't put ID tags on everything, or track you, or have a surveillance state. That was simply not possible. But they did price fixing, they did wage and price controls, they set minimum wages, they would set maximum wages, they did public works, they restricted trade in all manner of ways. Trade was, if you go way back into like the Bronze Age, the monarchies typically view trade as something that could only exist in a managed form for their benefit. So if you or I were simply attempting to trade goods with each other, this would not be allowed unless the monarchs of our respective states were convinced that it was to their benefit. It was an extreme form of mercantilism. And if you go fast forward even into like the Middle Ages, late antiquity, the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, and even into the Renaissance, this is still the case. And actually, to be honest, I mean, I don't know about most, but many Marxists at least realize that there has not been a free market economy. If there ever was, it hasn't been until the recent past. If you look at Karl Marx, he obviously didn't think there was a free market. He believed in this progression, and they were only then in the 1900s achieving that. If you look at someone like Erich Fromm, the Marxist sociologist from Germany, who wrote an interesting book on the psychology of the Third Reich, called Escape from Freedom. He's also very well aware that in medieval times there was basically, well, more or less we would have to call it an economic caste system. You were born into the role you had. There was no mobility, horizontal or vertically. There was no activity that wasn't regulated by the monarchs, you know, in conjunction with the guilds or what have you, or the church. Even a cursory examining of the litigation that took place in medieval times will reveal that a large proportion of the crimes aren't, you know, murder or robbery, but they're people disputing monopolistic claims. So, for instance, I just read a book on Henry II, and they talked about how an abbey sued a manor, a lord, because the abbey had a monopoly on the keeping of bees and the production of mead, and the lord started to produce his own, something that on a free market would obviously be justifiable. And of course the king said, no, only the abbey is allowed to make mead in this shire. So clearly a restrictive covenant there, not free market at all. And this is just normal. That's not some rare example. That's typical. So I think it's completely false to characterize the history of the world in that way. We've never had a truly free market, just as you have said that we've never had true socialism. Now it depends how you define it, but no matter how you define it, if it's what's the word, an intellectually pure version, it's probably impossible in the absolute sense. A free market economy, to be 100% free, would mean there could be literally no crime. If anybody stole from somebody else, that would be an aberration to the free market. I don't think there's anybody in the world who believes that kind of society is ever achievable, but that's not to say it's not desirable to work towards that end. Now, I don't know exactly what your specific breed of socialism is. My guess would be that it would be similarly impractical, at least to be actually implemented. Now, that's not to say it's not necessarily something you would want to aim for. I'm sure I wouldn't want your kind of socialism, but I'm just saying hypothetically. So there has never been a free market. We've had freer markets in the 19th century for sure, especially in the United States and Great Britain. There was, and at the time it was called the liberal movement. In Great Britain you had, well, Smith is given a lot of credit here, but actually he's a little bit before this. He was writing in a mercantilist period, actually. It wasn't until the repeal of the Corn Laws and Cobden and all them that Great Britain really achieved a much higher degree of economic freedom. The United States, in a similar time period, the same happened. However, there always has been government intervention in the economy, especially in money and banking, and also to lesser degrees in things like tariffs, and obviously arbitration, defense, that sort of thing. And most of our problems, as far as the economy goes, can be traced to those aberrations or deviations from free economy. In any event, I don't want to get too much into that other than just say I think that it is incorrect to say we've had thousands of years of free markets, and we've already tried that. Although I don't think it's incorrect, at least as far as people have claimed that it is natural. So there are a couple other points I want to make, but this video is getting a little long, so I'm going to do that in a subsequent one. All right.